Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yusuke Wada. I'm your host in jfuneral.com. Today, I'm doing video in English because I'm having a lot of inquiries on Japanese rituals and cremation in Japan from abroad. And I want to talk about this because we have a funeral business trade show in Yokohama on the 29th and 30th in Pacifico, Yokohama of this month, in a couple of weeks. And cremation is the basic de facto standard in Japan and has the highest cremation rate in the world, over 99.9%, actually 99.7%. Whatever it is, it's the highest. And just about everyone gets cremated in Japan. And many of the foreigners do as well. So this is the situation, and I want to talk about it. And here it is. Cremation in Japan. What do you expect? I want to talk about this, and the reason is I'm doing this video in English is because I'm getting a lot of inquiries, as well as I want to show you how it is in Japan. Here's the overview. I'm going to talk about the overview, the cremation law, I should say the ordinance. It's not a law, and the location without crematoriums, and exceptions of cremation law or the ordinance and historical context, why we have cremation and modern cremation facilities and ceremonial practices and post-cremation ceremonies. Please bear with me. Okay, cremation practice and regulation in Japan. It's 99.9 or 79%, I should say. There will be about 1.6 million deaths in Japan this year. Last year was 1.59. This year probably it's going to rise a little. It's been rising, and as you know, statistics department in Japan, the government has issued a warning of how many people they're going to be dying. Decrease in the population, which will be about 33 million people, decrease in population by year 2050 in about 25 years. I want to talk about this regulations of what we have and how it can be settled. All right, I'm calling this ordinance because it's semi-mandatory in Japan, and Japanese 99.999% of Japanese gets cremated because we don't want to make fuss about finding where the burial and all that. And Japanese are known to have a family graveyard. Japanese have family graveyards. We've been taught that someone has to take care of the family graveyard. That's why we get cremated. When we die, we have our urns in there. And the size of urns differ from Eastern Japan and Western Japan. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. It's an idea it's been around for the last over 150 years, close to 200 or 150 years in Japan of being cremated. There are places without crematoriums, such as islands, small islands. People who live on the small islands, they can either have them shipped to the mainland and use a facility there, which takes a bit of time, but some of the small islands, they do that. And there are islands that's a little bit too far offshore that's going to cost more or bigger of a hassle bringing in the coffin and having a funeral to be up and cremated. So what they do is they have a burial of their own on the island. And there are towns like Samukawa. I live in Chigasaki, and next door neighbor Samukawa doesn't have a crematorium because it's going to cost more for the residents, and the taxpayer's going to have to pay for that. Instead of that, they rather borrow Chigasaki or other facilities and get cremated there. It's cheaper for them, and reimburse the residents of Samukawa. And places like Kamakura, they also don't have a crematorium for historical reasons. And what they do is they have an agreement with Zushi's, the next city over Kamakura, to a company called Seikosha, which they cremate all the people and vicinities as well as anyone who wants to get cremated there. It's a private business. It's a private ownership. And not many private ownership crematoriums exist in Japan. It's a public service. This is one reason. And Tokyo has a different problem of this. I'm going to go over that as well. Historical opposition and archaeological concerns. We do have that. Kamakura does not have a crematorium due to these reasons. As I said, anywhere you dig, ruins going to show up, and they don't want to be hassled with building a crematorium and getting opposition from people, residents saying, "Oh, we don't want this." And that's what happened, and it's outsourced to Zushi Seikosha. And as I said in the previous slide, there are islands that's offshore islands that cannot have there's no boating service, shipping service, so they just bury in the ground there in the public graveyard. Most crematories in Tokyo's 23 districts are privately owned by a company called Tokyo Hakusen, which is the subsidiary of Kosaido, which is a printing company. And the owners are Chinese now. The stock owners are Chinese. This is a problem. It's a capitalistic country, and it's basically a privately owned public service, but it's publicly owned, publicly stocked, exchanged in stocks market, and you have to please the stockholder. So what they do is they have to raise the price, and they've been doing that for quite a while in the past few years. This is why there's a lot of hatred going on in Japan. I should say hatred, because they decided to take over the ending expo index in Tokyo that's held in August, and a lot of the Tokyo's companies said we're not satisfied, so they just left and started not to go into the trade show. So there's a trade show in this month, the end of this month, Pacifico Yokohama, which is about the 26th time Yokohama exhibition, and there's a Tokyo exhibition. And the one that's in Tokyo is owned by the crematorium of Kosaido or Tokyo Hakusen, which runs the operation, and it's privately owned, and people do not like that for raising their price without any soft landing of negotiation. And there are two crematoriums in Tokyo. That's in Rinkai and Mizue. And Mizue is in Edogawa area, Edogawa-ku, and Rinkai is in Otaku. These are operated by Tokyo. As I said, we lack crematoriums. There's a lot of death that's rising. There are about 300,000 more since the last 30 years. People have died, the increase in death. And what happens is, in Tokyo, you have to wait for a week or 2 weeks to get cremated. So it's a big issue here in Japan, not only the islands and also on the mainland. And there are places that the municipalities are building new ones and decommissioning the old. I made a video in English in the past. As I said, there are exceptions. The religious restrictions allow people to be buried but they need to find their own graveyard. Not only they have to find their own graveyard, all Japanese, everyone needs to find their own graveyard. That's just why we have a shortage of graveyards. But do we really want a graveyard? The issue here is that we have scatterings as well, and people are scattering in the ocean. This is another business going on and growing in Japan, and they all have to find a place. And Islam and Jews, they don't want to be cremated. If they want to be buried in Japan, because it's going to cost about 2 million yen to bring their bodies back to their own country. If they can't afford that, they have to find a burial. And there are about 5 burials that I know. A couple in Hokkaido, a couple of them in Yamanashi, and Oita, and Iwate, I believe. Yes, there are 5 or 6 burials in Japan that you can have Islam or Jews or people who don't want to be cremated. And there are rural temples that are allowing people to have burial for a sanctuary or for saving these people as a safe haven. Cremation in Japan has been a practice for over 1,000 years. And once it stopped because of Shintoist idea, but when the plague 100 years ago started, the Meiji Emperor said we were going to start cremation again for safety of health hazards. and it became mandatory. But right now there is a issue of you have to wait for 24 hours before after pronounced dead, and just for the sakes of some people might come back alive, or they might be unconscious or semi in a quasi state of death and non-death. You can revive people in medical practices. And also in 1923, 100 years ago's great Kanto earthquake that devastated Tokyo, some people were still in shock. They were not dead, but almost cremated, and they didn't check their pulse. Almost burned people alive back then. That's what I was being told from my grandfather. And there were a lot of issues about that. Oh, by the way, if you are diagnosed with a contagious disease specified by the government, you will be cremated within 24 hours for safety of health hazard. The crematory, if you ever well, not too many people have gone to modern crematoriums. The reason I've been there to see the inside is because I was the co-chairman and the board of directors of the Funeral Academic Society of studying funeral cultures in Japan. And right now, most of them use electrical furnaces. And it takes about an hour, hour and a half, or sometimes 2 hours. You have a whole 2 hour period for after being cremated or start the furnace, and then when they go in, and you need time to cool it down. This is why it takes about 2 hours for the whole ritual. And when they go to the crematorium, the families wait in the lounge, or they rent a room if you're in Tokyo, and the size of the room differs from how many people there are coming into the crematorium. And for people like in Chigasaki, Fujisawa, or Yokosuka, where there's non-Tokyo crematoriums, they set up a room. You reserve, tell them how many people are coming, and they set up the room. When the body is turned to bones, in Japan we preserve bones, and it's not down to ashes. It's down to bones, and immediate survived family members will go and verify that it's them. So, but in any case, they go up and check that it's been properly cremated, and we wait until it gets cooled down. They blow air into it, and then after that, family members will gather and bring both sides of the body, and then they pick up each bone with two chopsticks, and put it into the urn. Well, the post-cremation. After being cremated, you have about 7 days, and for the first 7 days you go mourning and all that. So we have shonanoka. Those 7 days for people to gather at the funeral, it's going to take too long of a time. You don't want to gather around, so they bring it up onto on the same day as funeral. We bump it up. And regarding the picking up the ashes or the bones in Japan, about the Nagara River in Gifu, from east of that, all of bones gets picked up. West of that, only part of the bones get picked up. So the size of the urns differ. And what happens is most of the bones in the Kanto area, the east of Nagara, Gifu area, Nagoya, it gets all stored in one big urn. And the west of that, it gets into the crematoriums, just put them in a pit, and they get processed and thrown out. But people pick up whatever that's necessary in a small urn and take it back home, and then later on they get put into the head temple. Well, the conclusion is that cremation is the most prevalent practice in Japan, whether you're foreigner or not. And even Chinese, Vietnamese, or the Asians, they get cremated in Japan when they die. And the basic reason is lack of space, and it's simpler to find a graveyard. And with the religious beliefs, if you're a foreigner, they wish not to get cremated, you have to find your own burial if you want to stay in Japan. That's their issue. And as well as Japanese, they don't want to take care of that. So what happens is we just get cremated. It's much cheaper to get cremated than finding a burial. And then you can have your bones to ashes, then scattered or whatever you like to do, and or even put it in the graveyard. The cost of cremation varies from municipalities. In Tokyo, it costs about, at least it's going to cost 130,000 yen. More people, bigger the room, it's going to cost more. And this is a big issue in Tokyo right now. Well, yeah, speaking of this Tokyo issue, the crematoriums in Tokyo, Tokyo Hakuzen is the only company that's operating that has about 60% off the share in Tokyo, and they are raising the price whatever they like to do. And it's been an issue in the parliament and also in the Tokyo, in the governor's office. People are trying to solve this problem, but they can't. We've got to wait to see what's going to go on, and sooner or later the government's going to have to step in and do something about it. Well, this is about it on Japanese funerals. Well, cremation, I want to do more videos on it, and please hold on to that. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you give me a thumbs up on this and subscribe to my video. Thank you very much, and have a good day.